I'm feeling kind of blue this morning.
Why is that, Lisa?
We're nearing the end of this course.
We're not done with the subject yet. It's quite a long journey. Welcome to Statistics for Business 1. I'm Shankar, your instructor. And this here is Lisa.
And I prefer roads that are less taken.
She tends to get frosty when she is blue. We're going to be talking about decision trees today. So Lisa here can freely choose whichever path she wants.
I'm happy with that.
In this segment, we'll put together everything we've learned so far in probability. That includes Bayes' rule. Business scenarios tend to have several twists and turns. We'll pick up a problem in banking and learn how to make analytical decisions based on the available data. Along the way, we'll learn how to build a decision tree and enhance it with the data that's given to us. We will then apply Bayes' rule to derive a fundamental conditional probability and solve the problem. Here's a scenario. Trendy Bank or T-Bank is a small retail bank in Bangalore with a diverse clientele. Even though it charges a small fee for all of its services, interest on loans forms the primary source of its sustenance. Venkat, who took over as the bank president 2 years ago, is known for his thorough analytical approach. For several years, T-Bank handed out loans to its clients purely based on high ratings from a credit rating service. But bank managers often felt there was a disconnect between these credit ratings and the way some of their borrowers defaulted on the loans. After Venkat took over at T-Bank, he commissioned a year-long exercise. The bank ran a campaign targeted at salaried individuals and announcing attractive loans for an amount of 100,000 rupees or a little over 1500 US dollars. Let's not worry about currency units, okay? 940 clients availed of the loan, which had to be paid up in full within 1 year. The interest rate on these loans was 8% per annum, which was way less than the existing rate of 12% APR. The idea was to figure out the default rates for those who received a good score by the ratings agency.
And for those with a bad score too?
Precisely, Lisa, you've got the point. After this year-long exercise, Venkat examined the status on all of the loans. Here is a spreadsheet that we can look at more closely. We have the age of the borrower in number of years, which has been classified into 3 levels, 1, 2 and 3. We've got the education level of the borrower, which could be school, post-school or college. The credit score is 0 as reported by the agency if the person has a bad credit and 1 if he or she has good credit. Here's the annual salary, the exact numbers, which has been classified at 2 levels, 1 and 2. We will explain that later. And finally, this is what we should be looking at, whether the loan was paid in full or not. As you can see, most of them have paid, but there are a few who have not paid. We will look at them closely. There was one big question on Venkat's mind.
Let me guess. How reliable are the credit ratings?
Bingo! And he was surprised at what he found. 85% of the borrowers who had paid up their loans in full had a good rating. That's okay. A whopping 55% who had defaulted had also received a good rating.
So how much was the T-Bank paying for these credit ratings?
A steep 6,000 rupees per head, or about $100. That's per head, mind you.
I bet their salary earnings had something to do with the non-payments.
Right. Venkat split the borrowers into 2 camps. Level 1 for those making under 100,000 rupees a month and level 2 for over 100,000 a month.
You mean their annual salaries were under or over 1.2 million?
That's right, Lisa, you get my point.
How did these two camps perform on payments?
You're asking all the right questions. Level 1 borrowers made up 70% of the loan defaulters, but also 50% of those who paid up their loans.
Interesting. How many had defaulted?
About 19% in total. That's nearly 1 out of every 5.
I'm curious. What did the T Bank do with them?
Most of them made the initial payments. The bank then recovered as much as it could. Even then, it incurred an average loss of 5,000 rupees. Of course, the credit ratings agency was promptly informed of any of these defaults. That's a lasting penalty for the borrower.
What if the bank decided not to approve the loan?
Well, the money would remain parked in short-term treasury bills that guaranteed 5%.
So T Bank would earn rupees 5,000 on a loan amount of rupees 100,000.
Yeah, and that's not a terribly attractive proposition, right? Continuing our story, Venkat proceeded to build a decision tree based on what he thought was a good way to approach the problem.
Wow, that's complicated.
Just like in real life, Lisa. Let me explain the building blocks of a decision tree. The square nodes of the tree are decision nodes and the circular nodes are probability nodes. Multiple strategies can spring forth from a decision node.
Like whether to grant a loan or do something else with the money?
Right. Depending on the applicant, one of the strategies will be followed by the bank manager. Along every decision path, there may be some events that are governed by chance.
Like whether or not a borrower pays up a loan.
Correct. And the outcomes of these events are not equally likely in most cases. The tips of the decision tree contain payoffs from having chosen a path.
So if someone failed to pay up the loan, T Bank would incur a hit of rupees 5,000. What's this risk profile on the right?
Glad you asked. While dealing with decision trees, we tend to get lost in all of the numbers. The risk profile is a visual tool that helps us grasp the outcomes of a strategy. For example, R12 is a negative return value, which could alarm some decision makers. One look at the risk profile and we realize it has a low probability of happening. Let's get back to the T Bank's decision tree. The amounts in red within parentheses are losses. Now, if someone paid up in full, the bank would receive an interest amount of 8% per annum.
That's a profit of rupees 8,000 on the loan.
Let's keep it that way for now. There are administrative costs, but we'll skip them. After building this big tree, Venkat began to wonder if the credit rating was worth investing 6,000 rupees per head.
How about we ignore the rating and proceed?
Which is what the bank president began to explore.
This is a far simpler tree.
Based on salary levels. What we must bear in mind is that borrower behaviors are still unpredictable.
They may default even if they draw a large salary.
Or pay up even if they are making less. We know enough about probabilities to tackle this problem.
Probably in the next segment.
Probably. But at this point, I'll ask you to go ahead and try solving this miniature problem.